Right. So we were speaking about this idea that the test of life, so to speak, is really when we go out to the world to see if we can still remain connected to God there. If we can, that means that we're really connected. If we're only connected in the synagogue or while we do a mitzvah and holy actions, then it doesn't prove that we're truly and fully and deeply and I would say unstoppably connected, because that just happens to be the natural circumstances or the natural mode. But if I'm connected, even when it's hard, even when I'm tempted, and I still remain anchored and connected, that means that I'm truly one with God. And that was the reproach, if you recall of that story, the reproach of the Maggid of Duvna to the Gaon of Vilna, that he said to him, okay, because the Gaon of Vilna, one of the great rabbis of 250 years ago, even more, he said to him, well, reproach me. He said, I cannot reproach such a great man. But he continued and he said, well, my reproach is that you're always insular. If you were to go out of the world, who knows if you would remain as righteous as you are. And that's really the ultimate test of life, and that's what we were speaking about. So let's continue with that idea at the bottom of page 13. By the way,
15.
Sorry, page 15, bottom of page 15. But before maybe we continue, actually, I pulled it out. Here it is. So, as you know, Rabbi Steinsaltz would encourage us to write our own prayers in addition to the prayers of the Siddur. And shortly after he passed, they discovered some of the prayers that he himself wrote, in addition to the prayers of the Siddur, obviously, because he was a man who did what he preached. He didn't just preach. And one of these prayers is really a heart-wrenching, a soul-stirring prayer. But he mentions that idea that we're speaking about right there. And I'm just going to quote him. And if you want, Margot, I can share the prayer with everyone. And you can email it. But this is what he says. I'm just quoting him, and then we can continue. But he says, God, grant me the merit each and every day of my life to fulfill the following verse with mindfulness and passion. I have set the Lord before me always. Psalm 16:8. That's the verse that we spoke about last week. What does it mean that I've set the Lord before me always? This is what he continues to say. And as the Baal Shem Tov explained, that the many transient events in my life are all equal to me. Whether I'm disparaged or honored, whether I fail or succeed, whether I'm in a state of happiness or, God forbid, in a state of sadness, I will always remember that in every situation and in every circumstance, I am immersed in the divine flow. Imbue in my heart the ability to perceive certainty within uncertainty, the straight path within the crooked path, and beyond all these, the revelation of the divine within myself and within the universe. I think it's very powerful, but this is what it means. That when God is equal to me, and I'm in the divine flow, that means that it doesn't really matter what is happening around me. I'm in the divine flow. And I'm connected. So whether I'm sad or happy, whether I'm failing or succeeding, whether I'm tempted or not, whether I'm inside or outside, I'm still one with God in the same way. It's a very, maybe high level, very hard level to achieve, but still, this is what this is referring to. Okay, let's continue. Bottom of page 15. Unless, of course, you feel free to speak your minds too, remember. Okay, let's continue. Similar stories, is that where we are?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Bottom of the page here. Go ahead, Margot, or anyone else, but please.
Okay. Anybody want to read? No? Okay. Similar stories describe angels. Now, angels complain that humans commit transgressions. Yet, when angels descend to our world, they sin and cause others to sin too, just as people do. The renowned Chassid Rabbi Moshe Govrin was accustomed to sing, "Angel, angel, you have no wife or children. You don't worry about making a living. That's why you're an angel. But if you had a wife and children and worried about making a living, would you still be an angel?" Here, the author makes a side note of particular significance. Now, this quality of love of which we speak in the case of the intermediate people, which is attained at the time of prayer by virtue of the preponderance of the divine soul, and so on.
Right. So we're speaking about this quality of love. Remember, the chesed that comes from bina, or gvura that comes from bina, and then the opposite chesed, the attribute of kindness and of love. But what's important to mention here is this idea that our love of God, if it's real, shouldn't be interrupted by any event of life or by any mood of life. When I'm deeply in love, and that's true for every attribute, it's not just true for love, but what truth means is that it doesn't change and that it's not subject to change. That's what truth means. So if I have true love, my love cannot change if all of a sudden I'm in a bad mood. Or my love cannot change if the person I'm in love with upset me, because it's not dependent on whether a person upsets me or not. And it's not dependent also on the mood or on the weather, on the events of the day. It's true. And truth remains forever. And that in many ways is what the Benoni has achieved, that he's able to be so connected with God that his love for God is not dependent, again, on the transient events of life, as Rabbi Steindl put it in that prayer. It's always there because it's real. And if it's real, it exists forever and exists from within. It's not dependent on outside circumstances. Angels don't have that. And that's the comparison yet to angels. They don't have those tests. By the way, when God gave us the Torah, the Talmud says, the angels were complaining because they went to God and they said, how could you give such a treasure to the Jewish people? They're going to ruin it. And God then told Moses, you answer them. And Moses answered, well, the Torah says that you should respect your parents. Do you have parents to respect? The Torah says, do not steal. Do you have a yetzer hara? Do you have an evil inclination that will cause you to steal? And he went on and on and on. And it was a good argument, and he won. And therefore, we finally received the Torah in spite of the opposition of the angels. But what Moses was really saying is that it's easy for you to speak. We're going to ruin the treasure. Let's see what you do with it. Do you have any inclination? Do you even have the capacity to understand what we have to go through? And in many ways, in many different ways, Rabbi Levi Yitzchak Berditchev would often say, the advocate of Israel, as he was known, always find good things to say about the Jewish people, regardless of the circumstances. But he would often complain to God, saying, hey, God, you created the world upside down. Why? Because materialism is what we can perceive and see and touch and sense. Spirituality, we can't. We really have to work hard to perceive that. So no wonder many people are falling or failing. If you had created the world in an opposite way, that spirituality is what we perceive, and materialism is what we can't, then I promise you, no one will sit. And what Rabbi Levi Yitzchak Berditchev was saying, it's same as Moses was saying to the angels, that we have that test, that temptation, that materialism is what we perceive. Therefore, it's harder. Angels don't even know, have zero concept about materialism. And therefore, they have no ability to truly put their test of love or their love towards God to test. They just don't know. But on the other hand, that's really what ensures not just our connection with God, but it also what solidifies it and makes it real and more profound than even angels can make it. That's why in Judaism, we are encouraged to marry, we are encouraged to have children, we're encouraged, unlike in other religions where, for example, Catholic priests, they have to remain celibates all their lives, right? Or monks can't even mingle with society. You have those ideas in many other religions. In Judaism, it's very different. In Judaism, we're forced to go out to the world, as we said last week, "Lechu banim shimuli," because our love can only be put to the test of truth when we go out to the world, when we marry, when we have to pay bills, when we have to deal with the world altogether and all of its noises. But when we still remain true to Hashem, to God, during those moments, that's when we solidify that love in the most truthful and eternal way. And reminds me of another Talmudic passage about Ben Azai, who, interestingly enough, was one of the 4 sages who went to study the secrets of the Torah. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that passage, but there were 4 sages who went to study the secrets of the Torah, and only one went in peace and came out in peace, and that was Rabbi Akiva. The other 3, something terrible happened to each of them. One of them died. One of them became crazy. And the other one became a heretic, Elisha ben Abuya. But Ben Azai, one of them, before he went to study the secrets of the Torah, he taught that whoever doesn't engage in being fruitful and multiply is diminishing the image of God in this world. So they said, Ben Azai, hey, you're a big talker. You're not married. So how can you be teaching about being fruitful and multiply when you yourself don't fulfill that? And by the way, you just said that if you don't engage in being fruitful and multiply, then you're diminishing the image of God in this world. That means you're diminishing the image of God in this world. And Ben Azai responded, I know, you're right. He told his friends, and what should I do? My soul is in love or is completely infatuated. Maybe that's the word, chashka, infatuated with learning Torah. I just love learning Torah so much. I don't have time to be fruitful and multiply. I don't have time to get married. I just want to study Torah all day long. That's what he responded. Now, by the way, therefore, maybe it is no coincidence that when he was exposed to the deeper secrets of the Torah, he died. Makes sense after what he said. Why? Because he wasn't in this world to begin with. And when he went to study the upper worlds, his soul just left his body, expired, and he died. But Judaism forces you to have this equilibrium between the world and the heavens, between being, all the way up there, yet being all the way down here. And in the way through that balance, we can test our connection with God. And if it passes the test, then not only is our love true and eternal, but in many ways, to go back to Ben Azai's words, we are increasing the image of God, expanding the image of God in this world, because we are showing that God is not divorced from this world, but God is part and parcel of this world.
Rabbi,
into this world. Yes.
Rabbi, there's a story of the saint who went to heaven, and he wanted to find out where was the source of celibacy. So he went through all the texts, and then everyone heard a big groan in the heavens. It was the wrong spelling. It was celebrate, not celibate.
Okay, very good. Very good. Good joke. Okay, good. Thank you, William. But that's, the test of celibacy. But the test of marriage is really the test or the test of life altogether, of living in this world, right?
But not everyone can have children, including the
sure.
Lubavitcher Rebbe.
For sure.
So
for sure.
It's a blessing.
Absolutely.
But not everyone is blessed.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But everyone can have spiritual children. We can impact people and have spiritual children. Rashi has a quotes, in fact, because in the Torah, it speaks of Moses and Aaron being one. To the point that the Torah at one point, I forget exactly where, but in Leviticus somewhere, it says, Hu Moshe v'Aaron, which means he is Moses and Aaron. So Rashi immediately asks the question, what does it mean he is Moses and Aaron? They are Moses and Aaron. They were two separate people. Why are you referring to them as one? And Rashi quotes the Talmud that says that Aaron taught Moses' children Torah. And v'kol ha'melamed et ben chavero Torah ki'ilu yelado. It's exactly what it says. That means whoever teaches his friends' children Torah, it's as if he gave birth to him. So you can have spiritual children by teaching them Torah, by spreading the light, so to speak. When you do that, it's as if you gave birth to them. That's why this grammatical discrepancy. Who Moshe v'Aaron? They are one. It's almost as if Moses' children had two parents, two sets of parents. Yeah. Okay, so speaking of that quality of love that is put to test when we engage in this world, let's continue.
Okay. As mentioned, at times of prayer or other special moments, the Benoni reaches a love of God that causes his other side to go into hiding. The love is deeply felt, not only in his immediate awareness, it encompasses his full reality. He loves God with all his heart, without reservation, without misgivings. Yet his love is in comparison with the degree attained by the tzaddikim who serve God in perfect truth, not called the true service at all.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Most philosophical literature does not discuss the nature of experience. The question of how we determine, how we sense whether an experience is true, and how true is not a simple matter, neither related to this subject nor any other. In order to answer, the author broadens the question, what is truth?
Right. So we said, right, that the Benoni feels that it is like a complete tzaddik in moments of prayer, when it's in moments of complete ecstasy. And I'm sure we all experience moments like that, whether it's in prayer or during the Shema and the Amidah, like the Benoni, or whether it's, just because of God touching us during that moment, God's kindness, and we get a spiritual awakening. Or whether it's, I don't know, events that make us feel that way, or we go to the Western Wall and we feel spiritually awakened, and places like that. So the question is whether those moments really reflect the inner truth. Is it just a very transient event where I just felt God and I felt my connection with God for a few moments and then I'm going back to my real self? Or is my real self really in those moments? It reminds me of the great story of the Maharash, I think it was, Rabbi Shmuel of Lubavitch, of some 150 years ago, who, I don't know if I shared the story, so stop me if I did already, but who was visited each and every year by this very successful businessman who would go through his town for business. He lived far away, but once a year would go through his town and he would go and visit his rabbi, the Maharash. And every time he would go and visit his rabbi, he would take off his business clothes and put on his Hasidic garbs out of respect for the rabbi. And then he would go and see the rabbi, and then he would go back to his business and move on to his travels, and of course, wear his business garments again. One year he said to himself, who am I lying to? I'm lying to my rabbi. This year, I'm just going to go in with my business garments. I'm not going to change. It's just a lie. I feel like I'm lying to him. So he walks into the Maharash's office, and the Maharash says, "Whoa, I don't recognize you." He says, yes, Rabbi, I just have to tell you, every year I felt like I'm living a lie when I come to you because I'm changing garbs. But throughout the year, I never wear Hasidic garbs. And I said, out of respect to you, I would. But this year I said, I'm going to be true to myself. We hear that all the time these days. I'm going to be true to myself. And the Rebbe Maharash responded so powerfully. He said, 1 second, you think I didn't know? You think I didn't know that you were wearing business garments on the outside? I knew, though, that when you came here, you came with your true self. So you wore Hasidic garbs. And then when you left, you were lying to the world. Now you're telling me that you're lying to me and being true to the world. That's not the way I've ever saw you. So the question is, how do you define that true self, right? Yes, we all have moments of fluctuations where we wear these garbs or those garbs. And by the way, it's not just physical garbs. Sometimes we're emotional garbs. Sometimes we're spiritual garbs. But the garbs, the garments that really reflect our truest self are the garments that are the soulful ones, that are the godly ones, that are the spiritual ones. Yes, we wear other garments, but those are the fake garments. We are lying to the world. When we go into the Maharaj, so to speak, that's when we allow ourselves to really unleash the deepest layers of ourselves. In many ways, that's true with the Benoni and should be true for every one of us. Those spiritual awakening moments are not moments that are fake. You know, when the Benoni feels something very special during the Shema, it's not that, oh, don't fool yourself. It's not you. The real you is when you're tempted out there in the world. No, that's not true. The real self is really the self that is connected to God. What can we do? We don't always feel it. The goal is to take that real self and spread it as much as we can to the rest, to the other parts of our lives. But really, we shouldn't be dismayed by the feelings of materialism and temptation that overcome us, because they don't reflect our real self. And really, in many ways, that's what defines truth. We're speaking about truth here. Truth has many definitions, but the truth of the soul is expressed particularly during the spiritual awakenings. That's the truth of our souls. That's our truest self. The rest of the time, it's just because we have layers upon layers, and we have, filth that sometimes threatens us. That's why, by the way, the Baal Shem Tov would often compare us to diamonds. He would say that, the Jewish people are called, in the Torah, they're called Eretz Chefetz, which means a land of treasures. And diamonds come from within the earth, from within the soil of the land. And he would often say, we're diamonds. What can we do? That we're in this land, sometimes a lot of filth, a lot of soil covers us. But the worst thing that can happen is when a diamond says, I'm not a diamond anymore, I'm just a part of the soil. That's the worst thing that can happen. Diamond should always remember that he's a diamond. So what if he's covered with a little bit of earth? Your real garments are not the earth, but it's the radiance of the diamond.